Loving, loving Sairam, Sister Rebecca J. Jani, nicknamed as Sister Becky, the Sri Sathya Sai Global Council of Trinidad and Tobago lovingly welcomes you to the series A Week, Unite and Inspire. We are extremely grateful, blessed, and honored to have you as our guest on this evening's program, which can only happen through the grace and divine will of our beloved Mother Sai. So, Sister Becky, share with us, how did you first come into contact with our beloved Mother Sai?
Okay, thank you, Brother Fies, and thank you, Swami, for this opportunity. Many, many years ago, I was brought up in Pennsylvania in the late 50s, early 60s. I had a spiritual bent as a child, but I also had a very, very strong over-questioning mind. I love Jesus. I used to think of him as my childhood playmate when I was a little girl, so I developed the friendship with God. When I was about 12 or 13, I thought I might want to be a sister when I grew up. But one night, as I was saying my prayers, I thought, how do I know anybody's listening? Are you there? Is anybody there? I prayed some more. Nobody answered. So I went through 4 years of agnosticism, just praying constantly, wondering if anything was ever true, till one day, the hotel where I worked, it's a resort area in Pennsylvania. I worked in the gift shop, and we had a new young lady come. And she said, I understand you got into Georgetown University. Well, I want you to know, I know teachers who are much greater than anybody there. And I said, oh, really? I said, tell me about them. So she told me about a lady named Hilda Charlton, who's known to older side devotees who had been there for many, many years. Hilda came back to the United States, and she taught people would gather around her to learn about Sathya Sai Baba, Anandamayi Ma, various spiritual teachers. So I learned about Swami. I was very skeptical at first, but then I thought, I think he's real. So what was I to do? I had been accepted into the university. I still wasn't sure about whether this was too good to be true or not. So it was similar to a summer romance. You meet someone during the summer, you're friends, you wonder if the friendship is deep. So off you go back to school. And if it's deep and true and eternal, it's within the heart, which it was. But unfortunately, I hate to say, I went off the path for a while. I love Swami, but the connection was in the back burner. I met my former husband while I was in college, got involved with him. I had 2 children. Well, I'm going to backstep. The young lady who was kind enough to set us up with the computer today, when she was a baby, her grandmother came from India to help us and to meet her new granddaughter. So we did what a lot of Indian families do. We would go to visit everybody you know in the family. So these were people who, from a part that really wasn't that devoted to Swami. When you say Sai Baba among these people, they immediately think of Shirdi Baba. Every house we went into that day had a picture of Swami. And I said, this can't be real. The third house, I looked at him and I said, I've been running from you because I think I'm unworthy of you, but I will no longer run. I went home. I went to bed. I woke up with a fever of 104. I was very, very sick. I almost died. I had arthritis after that. And I said, this is so ironic. I was running away from God in a metaphorical sense, and now I can't even walk physically. So I concentrated on Swami. I got back into my heart with Swami, and I would go to various satsangs. So when Arun came along, my second child, we went to India in 1984 to visit the relatives. They're Gujarati people. They live in the north. But they took me down by myself in February around Shivaratri time, where I saw Swami for the first time. That was back in the old days when there was hardly anybody there. And it was amazing because I felt such a sense of unworthiness. I take off my glasses because I didn't feel worthy to look at him. And then, so I was there for about a week. And then before I came back to the States, I brought my children to see him. And when we came back to America, the family situation was not good. I was pregnant with my youngest. And so consequently, I came to New England to live, to Massachusetts. And so over the years in Massachusetts, I went to what was the small Boston Center then, and eventually I became a member of one of the small New Hampshire centers. And up here, when you have a small center and people move away, it kind of travels. So to make a long story short, I ended up in Maine for the past 20 years. And the reason that I've been an officer all those years is not because I'm a great leader, but because it's such a small group. So it's been fun, and it's just like a family. And we decided that we felt more compatible with the Global Council than with the international organization. So here we are. And over the years, I've never had an interview or anything, but Swami has said, if you cannot dream of him unless he wills it. And I've been blessed to have many, 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 many dreams. And that's how he's guided me. Sai Ram.
Thank you very much, Sister Becky. Very, very interesting how you came into contact with Swami. So share with us, and I know you've been involved in the organization, as you said, many, many years. So you have had many wonderful experiences. You just stated you had many dreams of Bhagwan. So over the years, can you select at least two of the most memorable experiences you've had with Mother Sai and share with us?
Okay, the first one I'm going to tell you, after I just finished telling you I didn't have a lot of physical interaction at darshan time, ironically enough, this is going to be a darshan experience. So I've always felt like I don't love people enough. I don't love God enough. I don't love myself enough. So one day when Prema and I were there, we were fortunate enough to get into one of the front rows. And that was when Swami was in the wheelchair, so you could easily look at him. 2 years later, he was in the car instead, so, the windows would be up, and all you'd see is the reflection of the chandeliers. But at this time, Swami was still very much visible because they would bring the wheelchair or the golf cart through. So they were bringing Swami through, and I looked, and I said, oh my God, I'm in the front row. If he looks my way, I'm going to say something. And of course, you don't shout out there. That's not the discipline. And if Swami is who you believe he is, you don't have to yell anyway. In fact, you don't have to be there. But I decided I would silently mouth this. So he suddenly looked very slowly, and our eyes locked. And as I was looking into his eyes, I said, Swami, I love you. You know that I love you, but I do not love you as much as you deserve to be loved. Please help me. Well, his eyes grew very wide. He looked like a child who was seeing something wonderful for the first time. Total astonishment, total innocence. And time stopped. No thoughts in this overactive mind. And then he turned and interacted with the other people. So for the rest of the day, I could barely speak. And so that was wonderful. Okay, so now the second experience, ironically, again, is a darshan experience. But this time, it was very mysterious. Swami has said that he dwells in all beings. And I think in this one, Swami actually manifested differently to me. This time we were sitting towards the back of the hall, and in front of us were a couple of Russian ladies, And a little girl was climbing all over their laps, patting them on the cheeks, fixing their hair, fixing their shawls, and muttering all sorts of words that I didn't understand. So the little girl, she didn't look Russian. She looked Indian, but she looked like she had wandered in from the village. And because her hair was like that dull brownish color, she looked as though she was poor and didn't get the proper nutrition, but she was radiantly happy. So we're sitting there some more, and then all of a sudden she jumps off the lap of the Russian ladies and she comes over, sits in my lap, and starts fixing my hair, fixing my glasses, saying words over and over again. And she's doing the same thing to Prema. And then all of a sudden, she grabbed my face like this, very, very hard, to the fact where it was almost painful. And she looked right into my eyes and said, "What do you want?" No accent or anything, just, "What do you want?" And I was like, oh. And fortunately, I had enough composure to actually ask for something. I said, "I want to love the Lord my God, with all my heart, my mind, my strength, my body, my spirit, and I want to love my neighbor as myself." And then she went back to being a little girl. She jumped off my lap and ran out the hall. So what was interesting was, number one, the Save a Doll doesn't let children wander all over the place. And if there are children there and they're sitting with someone, they generally hush them up. So after darshan, I asked the Russian ladies, I said, "Do you know who that little girl is? Is she with you?" "No, we've never seen her before." So I thought, wow. And here it was. Swami was manifesting as a young child. He was appealing. I was the one with the great intellect from grade school who couldn't believe in God because, there were just too many unanswered questions. So what does God do? God appears as either childlike in his own form or as a child. Sairam.
Thank you so much, Sister Becky. What a very unique way of Swami communicating to you, taking the form of the child and squeezing your cheeks and asking you, "What do you want?" But the answer that you gave is interesting. You said, "I want to love God more and more with all my heart and soul and being." And how have you taken that statement and applied it and put it into practice in your life since that incident happened?
Okay, that's a hard one. And actually, my children would tell me that I'm my own worst critic. And even my own mother would say, "You think you don't love people, but you do." Then they would say, "You actually love people more than you realize." And I'm going to tell you another dream where Swami confirmed this. I had a dream where Prema went and sat on his lap, and I was busy with my books and my shawl and everything. And he looked at Prema and he said, "Your mother really loves me, but her mind gets in the way." So I've remembered what Swami said about that. And I've watched my mind and I've said, I might not be as bad as I think I am. Even my own children think I'm wonderful. And if your children think you're wonderful, you've probably pleased your harshest critic. Oh, no. I'm going to correct myself. Who is our harshest critic most of the time? Ourselves. So the problem is, I cannot love God unless I love myself. I can't love you. I can't love my cats. I can't love my little pets down in the basement. I can't love my coworkers. I can't love President Putin over in Russia. I can't love anybody unless I learn to love myself. So Swami's been working on that. And I've been working on myself too. I've been thinking, if Swami has said he's pleased with you, who are you to argue with him? And then I've been watching my attitude too, because I find that there's a few people who, for some reason, I might bear a minor resentment to. And I remember what Swami taught about that. he said, look at your thoughts, see where they're coming from. So that's what I've been doing. And I also did what Ramana Maharshi did. You just sit and watch, you take the witness. And then I say, well, I should stop criticizing myself so much and just resolve to do better. And so that's what I've been doing with that, Sairam.
Very, very interesting, Sister Becky. And yes, the practicing of the witnessing attitude is very, very important. And it reminds me of a saying of Swami, where he says, let the wave of memory, the storm of desire, and the fire of emotion pass through your system without affecting your equanimity. And it's more or less being the witness of what is arising within the mind, but not getting involved. Because the moment you get involved, the duality takes place and you begin to become affected by whatever you are witnessing. So that's very, very interesting. So the next question is, having been in contact with Swami for so many years, you've been very much involved in the center in Maine. How has practicing the teachings of Sai Baba transformed and continue to transform your life over the years?
Well, I think I'd like to say I'm more patient. And I actually have customers who come into the post office and they said, "Oh, we come here because you're kinder than most people." And other people say, "I don't know how you have the patience to deal with this situation." And I'd like to say that I'm that way at home because home is your biggest battleground. But my own children have told me I'm not as bad as I think I am. And so I'd say the most important thing is to learn to love yourself, because if you don't love yourself, you're not going anywhere. You just sit there and you think about your faults, and then you think, well, if I'm that bad in this lifetime, what did I do for the past 5,000 or 6,000 years? Oh, I'm a terrible sinner. So I'm learning to let go of that because Swami doesn't like that. Sairam.
Thank you, Sister Becky. But I want to explore a little bit about that statement you made where you felt that you were unworthy or not good enough to be loved by God. Did something happen to trigger this program within yourself that you would feel this way?
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, you go ahead. That's the question.
Well, I think it's a vasana. I think that I came into this lifetime like that. And I was very fortunate, the parents that I had. My mother tended to be hypercritical, but my father was the opposite. And he'd say, "Oh, don't worry about that." Or he'd tell me, "You can do better than that." And then I'd do it, but I wouldn't feel bad about myself. And I think, speaking of vasanas and past lives, the definition of purity in the Western religions, it's very narrow. And it doesn't have, the depth that Swami says. Purity for Swami is pure love. And it is a lack of, it's being selfless. Now, in America, sometimes our standard of living is different in our relationships with people. And I held myself to a high standard, but I still fell. And I thought that, oh, I'm not good enough for Swami and this and that. But then he evidently, I had a dream once where he did come in and he looked at me and he laughed at me and he said, "You belong to me. You are not ready for me yet, but I will come and get you." And I was sitting on a couch with my ex-husband at the time. So I felt troubled about that relationship, that it was not something I should be in. But Swami said, "You belong to me and I will be back later." And he did come back. And, once he's I think Shirdi Baba had that saying about, catching a bird, it's around the bird's ankle, and what the guru once the guru gets you might think that you've gone away, but you haven't, and he just has to pull the string and pull you back. And that's it's a Sairam.
Yes, that is very, very interesting. And it seems that the dreams that you've had over the years, that Swami is communicating to you from that inner level through the dreams, and giving you guidance and giving you confirmation and helping you to resolve those programs that are damaging, as you said, vasanas that may have come from a past life. And that is really, really wonderful. And it's really the grace of Bhagwan. And he's actually telling you that he loves you and he's coming to get you.
Yeah.
Very, very, very interesting. And he once said in a divine discourse, no matter how high the bird may fly, one day it has to land. Because he says that you cannot get away from me. I am you and you are me. I separated myself from myself in order to love myself. So we are him. We cannot run away from him, because we are actually him in this particular form. So very, very interesting, Sister Becky. I want to go back to your bio data where you made a statement that you have been working at the post office, where I get to put Swami's teachings in every moment of the day. Can you expand on that statement?
Yes. At the post office, well, what I do is the first part of the morning, it's sorting packages and everything. So it's like 5 a.m. and, you can silently chant whatever, if you remember, because that's something, Namasmarana is something, it's the easiest thing in the world to do, but it's also the easiest thing to get knocked off track. So the teachings that I would do there is to see the best in everyone. And the other teachings that I get to practice there are, if there's a few people who you felt they've done you wrong, or people are difficult to work with, you get to practice patience and equanimity with them. And then the other thing is fearlessness. The post office in the United States has a reputation for having overbearing supervisors and people in charge. I've worked for a lot of good people as well. And one day I was driving to work because something went wrong. And I'm thinking, oh boy, Chuck's going to kill me when I get there. And I said, hey, wait a minute, Swami. Why is it that I am nervous about Chuck? All he can do is yell at me. And if he gives me a problem, I just call the union, because that's what the union's there for. Yet, you can destroy this universe at a moment's notice. And I'm not afraid of you at all. And I said, that doesn't make any sense. I know you don't want us to be afraid of you. And I said, you certainly think that I should stand my ground. And I have had experiences where, after I've stood my ground in certain situations, someone comes to bless me in a dream. For some reason, a few years ago, Ramana Maharshi came and blessed me. I don't know why Swami sent him instead. I have a great love for him, but it's interesting that he came after I, had to stand my ground with somebody. Now, the second part of Dharma at work is this. We have a big lobby, and I see the customers come in. They reach for that box because it's been advertised on that commercial that anything you fit in the box you can send for like $17. And I noticed it's an old lady on a fixed income. So she comes up and I said, ma'am, where are you mailing that to? Oh, I'm sending it to Boston or New Hampshire or something. I said, come here, give me that box. And she says, well, it's the right one. I said, it may or it may not be. So I weigh the box. And if it's what they call the variable rate box, if it's going close, It's not supposed to cost that old lady on the fixed income $17. She can do it for $8 or $9. And they always tell me, oh, thank you so much. You went out of your trouble to do, you went out to trouble to do this. And well, see, I feel sometimes Swami pushing me. I do this because I feel bad for the people. I don't want them to overspend, especially if they're old and they don't have a lot of money. But also, even if I was having a crummy day, I still feel that push from within saying, oh, you go over and help them. They're not doing the right thing. And they'll thank me for this. So the Swami has talked about your conscience being God. And that is very, 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 very active at work. So those are the few examples, Sairam.
Yes, it's really amazing. It's really interesting how with every devotee and their experiences and where they work and who they interact with, how Swami creates the opportunities for us to do seva, even at the workplace, and two beautiful examples you've highlighted there. And it is the way in which work becomes worship. So rather than a mundane activity, you bring Swami into the workplace with the right attitude, and then you transmute that, what you might call the worldly work. And because of your attitude and dedication and offering, that work becomes worship. So, Sister Becky, coming from a Christian background, and I know we've just celebrated Christmas. We are now just in the first week of the new year. And there were so many similarities between the teachings of Jesus the Christ and that of Sri Sathya Sai Baba. And in fact, Baba, I was listening to a Christmas discourse where he said, nowhere in the world is Christmas celebrated the way it should be celebrated than in Prashanti Nilayam. And, he said the Hindus will celebrate Shivaratri, the Muslims will celebrate Eid, but everybody celebrates Christmas, whether you're Muslim, Christian, Hindu. And when you go to Puttaparthi around Christmas time, you see evidence of that. People from all different walks of life, all different colors, all different languages, coming together and singing carols in Greek and German and English, and it's a beautiful feeling. And then having to do Nagar Sankirtan and wave the light to Swami when he comes out in that beautiful white gown on Christmas morning. So really, really wonderful to be there for Christmas. But share with us, one of the essential items associated with Christianity is the cross. And Swami has spoken about the significance of the cross. What is your understanding of that message of the cross of Christianity?
Well, this is interesting because you ask any Sai devotee about the cross, they're going to give you the quote where Swami talks about crossing out the ego. But I would like to take it a step further. And I will tell you a dream I had. Many years ago, I dreamt I was at the crucifixion. And while the crowd was there, Jesus was in terrible pain and agony. And Mary Magdalene, his closest, most devoted disciple, was hysterical with tears. So this would go on. And then all of a sudden, when the crowd would disappear, they'd look at each other and they'd giggle and they'd start laughing. Then when the crowd came back, they'd go through, oh, I'm in terrible pain. I feel like God has abandoned me. And then Mary, how could they do this to my poor Lord? And it went back and forth a few times. Then suddenly the scene changed. I was in an abandoned railroad station and Swami was standing in front of me holding my hands. And he looked into my eyes and he said, he didn't say it verbally, but I could hear his voice inside my head. Now, do you understand? Do you really understand? And I said, oh, yes, Swami. And what I got out of that was that the cross is there there's pain, there's suffering. And Swami has said that Jesus for a moment felt abandoned and he heard God saying, be alike my son, be alike to everyone, all are one. So there's more to cross than the simple crossing out of the ego and everything. It's, can you take the sadness and the hard times in your life and the parts where you feel God has abandoned you, and can you look and see that really deep down inside the unity of humanity and how we're helping one another. And it turned out that that dream I had, the railroad station that it was set in, it looked vaguely familiar to me. And it actually is a real place. It is an old railroad station in the mountains in New Hampshire that's been restored. Behind the railroad station is a vast wilderness tract with many beautiful paths and mountains. And after Mahasamadhi, I was, like a lot of people, I was very sad, even though you knew that Swami was, not really dead and all of that. It still was very sad. And, I felt bad because Swami had gone through much suffering. I felt bad. When I was a little girl, I used to meditate on Jesus on the cross. And then when I was in my 50s, I was constantly saying Gayatri so he wouldn't die. And then he did die. And I was very, very sad. So to get back to this scene, in this particular area, they have a list of mountains that you can climb. And then it's just for fun. And then you get a patch and a scroll that you went to all these places. Well, one of them, it's more or less a joke among people because it's an 18-mile round trip to a place that has no views. And the path is considered boring. Well, with Swami, nothing is boring. Everything is beautiful. And this place has its own beauty. So it is a long day. And I was coming back. And before you get about 3 miles from where the car is, there's a creek with a bridge over it. So Prema was a couple minutes ahead of me. And I looked down and I didn't realize that. And I said, who is standing on this bridge? Is Prema waiting for me? But I looked and I said, my God, it's 12:30 at night. I see a wheelchair on this bridge. And then there, oh my God, because I could see the silhouette. I could see the hair. And then the hands came up. And I says, whoever said Owl's Head was a boring hike? Whoever said that there was nothing to see here? And so I thought about it. I said, here Swami was showing me that, you can be with Swami anywhere. And if people say, when's the last time you saw Swami? And I'll say August 1st, 2012. And if they say, well, no, he took Mahasamadhi. And I'll say, doesn't matter. Jesus came back from the dead. Swami didn't physically come back from the dead, but God can do whatever he wants. And so that was a beautiful experience. Sairam.
Yes, Sister Becky, that is a beautiful, beautiful experience. And the hands, the Abhayasta blessing, and that silhouette, that energy, that aura that you saw around the body, really, really amazing. And 12:30 in the night, my God.
Yeah.
Did you feel scared?
No, because we do long hikes and we sometimes backpack and stay in the woods for a few days. We prepare very well for these. We carry at least 2 headlamps apiece, and we know what we're doing and everything. But also, it was full moon. It was so that was lighting too. And as a matter of fact, when we did finish this list, we did it on Guru Purnima Day. And it was also the feast day of Mary Magdalene, that saint who was with Jesus when she died. So we finished our list on a holy day, and we went in at night and saw the beautiful full moon on one side of the mountains and the beautiful sunrise coming up on the other. So you could, Swami has been involved in everything. So you talk about keeping the consciousness on a daily level, like the guy on Arul last night. He talked about constant Even if your mind slips, you can still bring him back, or he'll bring himself back. Sairam.
Very, very beautiful sharing, Sister Becky. Now, from your bio data, you were there with one of your daughters, Prema, twice in December 2004 and then Christmas 2006. Share with us the experience, the feeling, the vibrations of those two trips to Puttaparthi where you experienced Christmas.
Okay, the first time with Prema, we were not there for Christmas. We actually got there New Year's Eve, and we were there. It was right after the tsunami, and we were there for about 3.5 weeks. And then the second time we went, we did go for Christmas. And that was an interesting trip because it was my last trip to see him in the physical. And I was so grateful that I had a chance to go there for Christmas and sing in the choir and everything. But the trip itself was a little bit difficult because I felt that there was a disconnect sometimes between Swami and me. And I know that sometimes devotees do feel like that. They go through a period of testing when they go there. And he would come out for darshan and the windows would be up on the car. And then also, they have those pillars in Sai Kuan Hall. A lot of times Swami didn't come out at all. And when he did come out, we were off in the hall practicing for the Christmas concert. Or when he did come out, I was behind the pillar. And there, and then again, that reminded me of my trip to the mountains because I said, Swami, I can't see you. And then I thought about, hey, wait a minute. What about all the blind people who have come and sat here over all the years? They didn't see Swami either. So I'm just going to sit here and picture him in my heart. And that's how I dealt with that. And funny enough, the cumulative lists that we did on Guru Purnima for those mountains, the last one is the most beautiful sunset in that whole range. And the night we did it, it was foggy. We didn't see anything. And I thought about Swami, not being able to see Swami most of the time. I was there for the last month. And I said, well, you have to go beyond the eyes. You go beyond the physical sight to see what's really there. And that itself is a blessing. You might not think so at the time, but it is a blessing. Sairam.
Yes, very beautifully and lovingly shared. So, Sister Becky, when you look at the teachings of Christ and that of Sai, the source is the same. Swami says, love all, serve all. Jesus says, love thy neighbor as thyself. In the Bible, it is said, it is easy to love those who love you. Even the animals do that. But to love those who hate you, who despitefully persecute you, who condemn you, is the true test of love. So what is your understanding of those two statements and how have you been able to translate that into practice?
Okay, what I do is when I catch myself being negative and resentful of somebody, I say to myself, why is this person still living rent-free in my mind? And then I also remember, what did Swami say sometimes about people you dislike or something? A lot of times they're reflecting your own bad characters. So I look at myself to see if I have any traits. And if the person I'm having the problems with, maybe that's not true. Maybe they do. Maybe they're just ornery and mean. So I remember that, well, God put them there for a purpose and you try to love them. But most of all, I think about this. When you think about Jesus, how he was treated, because somebody asked me once, they said, how could you forgive so-and-so after he did such and such? And I said, that's easy. I have a crucifix on the wall in my house. I go and look at it. I said, here's somebody much, much better than me who suffered much, much worse. And then you look at Swami, people talk trash about Swami. People did this, people did that. And he spent the last part of his life being unable to walk. So if you look at these great masters, and you look at them and figure, they're setting such an example. And to me, the greatest quality of Jesus was forgiveness. That was what stood out the most about Jesus for me, was his ability to forgive. And so when I look at things, I said, well, that wasn't so bad. Look what happened to Jesus. And if Jesus could transcend it, I can transcend it with his help. Sairam.
Very, very beautiful answer, Sister Becky. And it reminds me so much, as you said, when you look at the life of the divine masters, you notice that the way that they dealt with their detractors, those who said bad things or published bad things or said bad things about them, they always applied love as the weapon against their detractors. And in some cases, won them over with that power of divine love. And Swami says, my life is my message. And this is how he dealt with his detractors. And I remember the story of R.K. Karanjia, the editor with a Blitz magazine with circulation in the millions, who wrote many bad things about Swami. And then when he came to Swami with the list of questions, Swami, without even looking at the question, answered each one. And then in the end, was able to transform him to the point where he started writing beautiful articles in the same magazine that he was saying such bad things about Swami. So Swami had won him over with his divine love. As one devotee said, some came to scoff and remained to pray. Such is the power of that divine love, which, as you said, is the most valuable, is the most important value, because if you have love, everything else will flow. And that finding Swami within is really finding the love within, because God is love and love is God. And as he said, we must live in love. So, Sister Becky, another quotation from Jesus the Christ. He says that to enter the kingdom of heaven, one must become as a little child. What does that statement mean to you?
It means to be innocent and open. And I think it's interesting that you asked me this question, because the earlier question about experiences was when Swami was like a child. So children, they approach things openly. They don't have the preconceived notions standing in their way of understanding. So they're more open to things. They're more flexible. And even a child in a bad situation, they still are a little bit, they don't have the rigidity that adults do. So they're more open. Sairam?
Yes, and such a very important point you made, yes, that their minds have not been conditioned with prejudices, with conditionings, which sometimes comes from parents and society and the interaction with the environment, so that they are pure, they're innocent, and they're in a state of this bliss. So we have to, as Baba says, we have to unlearn. We have to be unmade and remade with our ego destroyed and replaced by this transcendental consciousness. So very, very interesting. But coming back again to another verse in the Bible, where Jesus said, love the Lord with all thy heart and soul, with all thy being. And you mentioned it in the beginning of the interview. How have you understood that and really practiced it in your daily life?
Well, that's a difficult one, because again, I'll have the inner war. Like the one side will say, you don't really love God as much as you do, and the other side will say, well, maybe you do. and I tend to be a harsh critic of myself. So what I do is I also look and see where I think about all the good that God has done for me and how grateful I am. And that helps me to be, gratitude is the important thing. That's something that there's a member of our center who's very big on gratitude. The gentleman whose house we have the meeting at, Chandrasekhar. And so I remember the gratitude, and I remember what my life was like before Swami. And then there's times where, maybe you just don't feel like doing something. And then you remember, no, God's been very good to me. What is the least I can do? And then the other thing is, if you've done something wrong or if you've messed up, you just apologize to the Lord, ask him to forgive you, and ask him to help you love him more and to learn from it. Sairam.
Yes, that's very interesting what you said. That when we make mistakes, we ask for forgiveness. We learn from those mistakes so that we don't commit them again. And I remember Sister Geeta Mohan Ram Baba told her, I can forgive you for the mistake that you make, but don't keep making the same mistake over and over and over again. So
Yeah.
I'm not learning the lesson from the mistakes. So that's very interesting what you've said. You have been involved with the center in Maine for the past 20 years, and you've served in many different capacities. What has that experience been for you? What has it done for you in terms of transformation, being in the center for such a long period of time?
Well, I would say that number one, it's given me confidence, because how I ended up being president was back in 2001, 2002. We had the place where we were having the meeting. The couple who, the house it was at, they said, well, we're going to be bowing out now. We might be moving away, blah, blah, blah. So you're going to have to select new officers, and you're going to have to move the center. So someone spoke up, said, well, we can have the meeting at our house. So then Trish says, all right, who's going to be president? So they started in a circle. So they started with, there's 20 people sitting there. The person on my right was the first to speak up. So everybody had a reason why they shouldn't be president. So they get to the very last person. I have 19 pairs of eyes looking at me, and I said, I have something to tell all of you. I said, I don't have perfect faith in Swami. My faith has been shaken to the core at times. And he's the one who does it, because he talks about putting the picture on the wall. You want to make damn sure that the nail is in there before you hang a picture. So I said, number one, my faith has not always been what it should. I said, number two, I don't know anything about how to do this. I said, number three, occasionally there will be meetings that I will not be able to attend, officers' meetings. So whoever's vice president of you guys are going to have to help me out. I said, fourthly, occasionally Swami calls all the officers over to Puta Party to I said to have to just for meetings and things. And I said, you all know that I don't have a lot of money. So if Swami wants me there, Swami will have to provide. And then they all started laughing. And I said, I am willing to try. And if you guys pray for me. So I did. And so I was president. And then I've been the devotional coordinator. I've done everything except education and seva. Because for the seva, we needed the meeting. I live in Lawrence, Massachusetts. I'm an hour and a half from the center in Maine. And people are saying, why don't you go to the local ones? And I said, well, they're very good. I said, but I feel as though this is my family, this place. And I said, it's such a small center now. If Prema and I don't go, I said, that's like, 20% of the place not being there anymore. So I feel like that's where he wants me. And it's like a family. And we have a good time. But getting back to the seva, it's really better to have, if you ever save a person. It's better to have somebody who actually lives in the area so that they can reach out and they know what needs to be done and who to contact and everything. So I would say the first thing is that never say that, oh, I don't know how to do that or I can't do that, because he will make it his business. And he's also done that at work. They joke about the post office picking the least qualified people for certain positions. So I always ended up doing jobs I felt I couldn't do when they got done. So I think a lot of times you think family situations, work situations are just mundane things. They're not. The whole world is a classroom for God and a testing ground for God. And you learn from these things. So I would say Swami took me. I was shy, didn't have any self-confidence. He said, go and do. Sairam.
Very, very interesting. The very things that you didn't want to do, he pointed you in the direction to do so that you could confront them and deal with them and overcome them. So all through the interview, you've been sharing experiences like this, which is so wonderful that with Swami's grace and his guidance, you are able to overcome so many things within yourself that was blocking that divinity from manifesting itself. Sister Becky, we spoke about before the interview that you would sing 2 songs. So I think now is a good time for you to sing the first one.
Okay, so the first one, I had a mental block and I said, oh, Prema, what are the words to this? But we wrote it down. And this one, it's written by this elderly lady. She's an optometrist, and Swami cured her of asthma and some other things through his teachings on food. So this is by Indra Mohindra. Swami said Swami gave her the words and the melody in a dream. So here we go. Love is the breath of life. Love is Sai Baba. Love is the breath of life. Love is Sai Baba. Love is manifest in all things equally. Love is manifest in all things equally. Love is the breath of life. Love is Sai Baba. God is pure love. Love is within God. God is pure love. Love is within God. I love my Lord God. Sathya Sai Baba. So thank you, Indra. And my apologies to Indra if I reversed the order of the words, but I think we did get the meaning across. So that's the first one. Now, the second one, there was a lady named Elizabeth Elwell. We call her Liz, and she's in her 90s now. She came to Swami in the late 60s, early 70s. She was teaching English in Delhi, and she stayed with a family. They were Shirdi devotees. She loved Shirdi Baba, and she regretted she had ever missed him. But someone had told her about Swami. She went to see Swami and she stayed there for like 20 years. And she volunteered as a Sevadal, but she also taught music. She would teach Indian bhajans to the Westerners, anybody who would want to learn. I met her in 1984, and then surprise, surprise, I met her. She lived in Maine for a while because that's where I was from originally. And one thing that gets discussed a lot in the United States and the Western countries is to try to include more English bhajans. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't like them. They say the quality's not that good. So this lady, Liz, she took Swami's words from a book called Prema Dara. It's letters that he wrote to his students and to people who volunteered in the ashram. And Liz took several of them, quotes. Some of them she set to tunes of bhajans already known. But this is one called Self is Your Own Nature, Assert It, Manifest It. And Swami's quote that she based it on is, he for whom you have been seeking on whom you were looking as the mystery of all mysteries, is the nearest of the near, is your own self, the reality of your life, body, and soul. That is your own nature. Assert it, manifest it. It is the truth and truth alone that is one's real friend and relative. Abide by the truth, tread the path of righteousness, and not one hair of your body will ever be injured. Self is your own nature, assert it, manifest it. Self is your own nature, assert it, manifest it. Self is truth, abide in truth. Truth alone is one's real friend. Self is truth, abide in truth. Truth alone is one's real friend. Self is your own nature, assert it, manifest it. Tread the path of righteousness, holding in check your mind, your mind. Tread the path of righteousness, holding in check your mind, your mind. Om Sai Ram, say Om Sai Ram. Om Sai Ram, say Om Sai Ram. Sai Ram. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Swami.
Sister Becky, that was so touching. That was so beautiful and so beautifully sung. And the words itself carries a very powerful message of the self, of who we truly are. So thank you very much. And you have such a beautiful voice.
Oh, thank you.
Sang it beautifully from your heart. And I'm sure that whoever hears and listens to this interview, they will be touched by those words and this wonderful interview that we are conducting. So I come to a question that many guests said is the $1 million question. And that is, when we look around in the society, we apparently see so much chaos, so much confusion, so much war, so much poverty, so much economic depression, people losing their lives, losing their homes, living on the streets. The pandemic has caused so much of pain. If someone were to come to you one day in the post office and say, Sister Becky, I want to make the world a better place. What can I do as an individual to make the world a little bit more loving, a little bit more kind, a little bit more peaceful? What would you share with that person?
Oh, well, I would, that's kind of I'm going to say it's hard, but it's not hard. I would say just remember who you are, do your best, love one another the way, remember that the person in front of you has a little bit of God within them. And remember that everybody else is fighting a battle too. If they come in and they're kind of negative and everything, you think, well, that person is having a lot of problems too. So maybe I can be a little extra nice to them. And then if it becomes too much, just simply say, I'm sorry, I can't help you with this. I hope the best for you. And then remove yourself from the situation. Because like Swami said, sometimes you do have to step back. But I would say just be open. And also, you need to take some time for yourself to be alone and to recharge your batteries. Don't burn yourself out. Jesus would go take small breaks. Swami would take people to Kodaikanal. So remember, you're an instrument of the Lord, but even instruments need to be put to rest sometimes. So do that accordingly. Remember who you really are, and then go out and try again. Sai Ram.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Very, very interesting. Yes, sometimes in our eagerness and enthusiasm, yes, to help, we really get ourselves burnt out, and then we're not able to serve because the instrument now needs to be recharged or rested. So we have to use wisdom and discrimination, Baba says, when we do favor. You mentioned a little bit before about challenges in your life. You mentioned a couple of them in the interview, but how do you view challenges that have come into your life over the years, and how have you navigated them into opportunities to become closer to the Swami within?
Well, I remember what a friend of mine told me once. Sometimes when bad things happen, when you're connected with Swami or with Jesus or with some great spiritual teacher, oftentimes when these challenges come, you remember they're either there for you to learn or perhaps it's a karmic payback. And if it's a karmic payback, normally with devotees, it was supposed to be a lot worse. So, like years ago, I walked into a plate glass door. Now, fortunately, it didn't shatter or anything, but I was angry for me. I says, "Oh, for God's sake, Swami, you should have watched me." And then immediately I says, "Wait a minute. With the force I hit that, it should have shattered. I should be picking shards out right now." I said, God watched out for me. So a lot of times things that happen that are bad, they could have been a lot worse. So you maintain the gratitude for that. And then sometimes if it's just too unbearable, again, unplug from the situation, ask others for help, pray to Swami for help, go do something differently. That lady Hilda, who went to see Swami back in the 60s, Hilda used to tell her class, she'd call them the kids. She said, "Well, kids, we're in New York City. If you're getting burnt out by all the testing you're being put through, by all the bad things, go eat an ice cream cone. Go see a Broadway play." That was in the days where anybody could afford to go see Broadway plays. And then she says, take a break and then get back on the path. So I think that, again, you look at the challenges for what they are. It's either karma that probably is a lot less than it was supposed to be. I had a friend who was a Sai devotee, and his car caught on fire. And he pulled it over, they put it out and everything. And then he had a friend who was an astrologer. She said, "Oh, I thought you're supposed to be dead right now." She says, "What do you mean I'm supposed to be dead?" She said, "Let me show you." So she said in his chart, "You were supposed to die by fire." And he said, "Oh my God." He said, "My car caught on fire, but I didn't." She says, "Wait a minute, you believe in Sai Baba, don't you?" He says, "Yeah." She says, "Well, that explains a lot." So you do pay some of the karma, and that will teach you and everything. But God helps you, your guru helps you through it. Sai Ram.
Thank you very much, Sister Becky. So we've come to the end of this wonderful, thought-provoking, very blissful, informative interview. So would you like, as we end, to share some parting words that come from within?
Yes, God is your friend. When I was a child, of course they tell you God is your father if you're brought up Christian. But from my earliest days, my own experience even when I was an agnostic searching, is that God is your friend. God is the beloved for some of us, and for the Madhura Bhakta people, the greatest love of your soul. It's a heart-to-heart relationship. Don't let anything stand in the way. Don't let your sense of inferiority, don't let your sense of I'm not good enough. Don't let any of that. Just be open and go to God. My own daughter said to me when I took Prema the first time, I said, "I must be crazy to do this. He'll probably throw me out." And she looks at me and says, "Why would he throw you out?" She said, "Many people there have sat there far worse than you. We're going." So the thing is, just go and be open and remember God is your friend and God loves you and he wants you to love yourself. Sai Ram.
Sister Becky, the Sri Sathya Sai Global Council of Trinidad and Tobago expresses gratitude and appreciation for you taking the time to share your personal journey and transformation at the lotus feet of our beloved Mother Sai. May Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba continue to bless you and guide you, and may you continue to be the loving instrument that you are as his mission unfolds. Jai Sai Ram.
Jai Sai Ram. Thank you.